Welcome back, guys. I'm coming at you with another new Ocarina of Time 2026 remake video today. And you might want to strap in for this one. This is going to be kind of a long one. Because today in this video, I'm going to talk about the combat. And I busted out my little handwritten notes here because I've got a lot to talk about and I want to make sure I covered each point. I know this was a pretty requested video. I think a few people in the comment section have mentioned they wanted to hear my thoughts and how I think the combat's going to change in Ocarina of Time 2026. And there's definitely, I think I've got like 5 or 6 big ways they could change the combat and make it more modernized and make it more appealing to a wider audience. Right, and the first point I wanted to talk about was implementing some kind of more aggressive combat. In the original Ocarina of Time and in the 3DS remake, one of the things that gets criticized the most is the kind of hit and wait combat, right? Like, you'll hit an enemy and you gotta wait for a set period of time until you can attack that enemy again. One of the good examples is stuff like the likes or, the Lizalfos. And even the Stalfos as well. There's just so many good examples we could use. Where basically the combat's kind of slow to a halt, right? You've got to hit and wait for an opening to attack that enemy. I think one thing they could do with the new game to make it a little more palatable is to implement, a totally new combat system, and essentially one where you can be a little bit more aggressive, right? You can really get in there. I don't know, maybe you can break their stance or break their shields or something like that to where you can get in and it kind of speeds up the combat, right? You can really take the fight to the enemy instead of having to sit there and wait, right? I know this game came out in 1998, and so that's probably some of the reason why they did what they did with the combat. And I think with modern, and I don't think, Ocarina of Time should be exactly like these games. There's no way that could work, but you have games like Elden Ring and the Souls games. These games just did combat perfectly, right? And you want to get in there with the enemy and deal as much damage as you possibly can while being as defensive as possible and also dodging their attacks. So I think there's definitely some things Zelda can learn from the Souls games and Elden Ring. Again, I'm not saying it should be exactly like that, but as far as just being more aggressive with the combat and just cutting down on that period where you have to sit and wait for the enemy to open up, that would definitely be huge. Another thing I think they definitely will do is to implement more sword techniques, right? Like you had in, for example, Twilight Princess that you learned from the Hero Shade. These techniques kind of add a little bit more variety to combat, right? I think there's a stab move and there's like a counter and a parry and one where you jump over the head of your enemy, right? Stuff like that, just to mix up the combat and make it more interesting, right? I think that would definitely work in a new Ocarina of Time. Because, with the original, you only have a few moves you can do, right? You can Z-target and hit A for kind of a power attack. You can stab, you can slash horizontally and vertically. Of course, you can block and you can roll out of the way, right? But I think there needs to be more depth to the combat in the new game. I think that's kind of the bare minimum ask, and I think that's definitely the direction they're going to move in, if I were to take a guess. Okay, and then you also have the roll technique of Link, right, where he does the little somersault. I think they could expand upon that and involve it more in combat, right? And like, again, I want to go back to the Souls games. I don't think it should be exactly like that, but you could make the roll more useful in combat to where maybe it provides some iframes, or I don't know if it already does. Correct me in the comment section, but the roll could provide some iframes or just a way to leap out of the way of the enemy would be kind of cool, and I think that's something that would help. Someone in my comment section also brought up a stamina gauge plus stamina play, and I think that would be kind of interesting. I don't know how they would do it in Ocarina of Time, given that the game's mechanics work the way they do. It worked in Skyward Sword to some extent, and I thought it was fine in that game and also in the Wild games. Right, but I guess one way you could do the stamina gauge system is to have like some risk and reward, right? Like maybe some stronger sword techniques and combos take up more stamina to do, and they deal more damage to the enemy. So then you've got to manage your meter and think about how you're going to attack the enemy and what techniques you're going to do, just to add some more depth. I think that's kind of a cool idea and it could work. But then on the other hand, if you implemented a stamina wheel or stamina meter, you'd have to kind of readdress the core mechanics of Ocarina of Time, and you'd have to change a lot about the core game. So that's one that would be interesting, but I don't think it's as likely as some of the other ones that I've already said and I'm about to go through here. Right, so right now I'm playing through Ocarina of Time. I think I'm into Dongo's Cavern. I actually just beat that and got the Spiritual Stone of Fire. But one thing I noticed that really sucked about the Ocarina of Time version was just the aiming system and how poor it was in general. Right, like if you're aiming with the slingshot or the bow, there's no way to know like where that projectile is going to land. Right, like if you played the game enough, you can pretty much guess where it's going to go, but there's no like reticle, there's no like sight on the bow or the slingshot that lets you know. So oftentimes when you first get these weapons, it's trial and error, and you're often going to be missing the targets. Like I think last night I was shooting at some keys in Dodongo's cavern, and I kept missing over and over again. So I would just go up and Z-target them and get them that way. Which actually brings me to my next point, and that's a better way to switch between targets. That was one of the most frustrating things for me in Ocarina of Time, is if you had a group of enemies and you need to switch quickly. I think the best way they could do this is to go about it in like a Souls-like fashion, like I said, where you can easily press one button, you pop between the enemies quickly, and the reticle is not too overpowered. It's just like a white dot or something like that. That would be pretty cool, and I think that's the way they should go about it in the new game. But yeah, definitely managing mob enemies and quickly switching between enemies would be a huge improvement to the combat in Ocarina of Time, and I think they definitely need to do this. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about was the difficulty, particularly the difficulty of the combat. I think in the new game they should turn it up a notch and make it just ever so slightly more difficult than the original Ocarina of Time. I think it's important they also don't make it too difficult, because we want Ocarina of Time to be accessible to newcomers as well. I think that if you were to ratchet the difficulty way up, it would kind of be off-putting to people, especially a younger audience, or even an older audience, But I also think it needs to be a little bit harder, just to give something for the veterans of the series like myself, and I know many others out there that are watching. Because as I was going through some of the intro dungeons in Ocarina of Time, it didn't stimulate me because it was so easy. I was just blowing through every enemy. I think I knocked out Goma in I know this is the first boss of the game, but I knocked out Goma in less than a minute. So I think increasing the difficulty ever so slightly would be huge for the game. And I think that's something they should do. One direction I hope they don't move in is that they make it somehow easier than the original game. I think that would be a huge miss on their part if they do try to do that. So let's hope that they don't. Also, something cool they could implement is using the environments kind of like how they did in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but of course modified for Ocarina of Time, right? Like imagine in the Shadow Temple you could use some of the devices, the torture devices in there, and the blades and stuff, and use those to attack enemies or get the enemies caught up in those traps using, I don't know, the physics engine or something. That would be pretty cool. And then also we have to think about Dodongo's cavern and the fire temple, and using the lava and the fire in those areas to either burn the enemies or push them off into the lava. I think stuff like that would be pretty cool and make the gameplay a lot more dynamic, and add a lot more fun and challenge, and really make you think about each combat interaction you engage with. So that's something they could definitely do. I mean, there's so many other ways you could think about to really interact with the environment, to take out enemies or kill them, or disable them. And one more thing I'd like them to do in the game is to really revamp how they approach the peer-to-peer duels, right? So I'm talking stuff like Dark Link and the Stalfos, by really upping the AI and making those fights more dynamic, right? I don't know, maybe they can make Dark Link learn your patterns and adapt. I know Dark Link is already pretty challenging as it is, but there's a few ways they could go to make that battle even better than what it was. And it's already one of the most memorable battles in the game. Really make these duels a test of your swordsmanship, so you really feel accomplished when you come out of the battles and feel like you really put everything you've learned to the test. I think that would be pretty awesome. I don't know, but it'd also be pretty cool if they implemented some kind of sword duel with Ganon himself. I love the one in Twilight Princess. They could do that, but they could make it even better. I think that would be pretty cool if they did something like that. But yeah, ultimately, to recap here, we can go down the list of some of the ideas that I've had, right? So more aggressive combat, that would be one of the things that I want to see in the game. I really want to get in there and take a win, and be aggressive with some of these enemies versus having to sit and wait. I know, Ocarina of Time gets that is single-handedly the biggest criticism of Ocarina of Time, is the hit and wait kind of combat and gameplay, right? And so number two is sword techniques. They really need to do this and implement more sword techniques into the game. I mean, because that really boosts the level of strategy and thought that goes into each battle. I think that's kind of a no-brainer and something that I predict they're going to do, but they definitely need to do it. And then we have the idea of a stamina gauge, an interesting thought. It could add some depth to the gameplay. I don't think they're going to do it, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be against it. We have a better aiming system. I think this is something they're absolutely going to do, without a doubt. So I think we can all be rest assured that that's going to happen and look forward to that one. And then we have modifications to the difficulty. I think they're going to switch up how the game works, how the enemies work, and just how difficult they are in general, and how long each combat encounter takes. I definitely want them to add a little more spice to each battle. Slightly bump up the difficulty, but then again, not make it too hard to where it's not accessible to all players. Then we had quick and easy switching of Z targets. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer. Like if we had a dual camera, which they're going to probably do that as well, but dual stick camera system, we could easily switch between which target we wanted to focus on. That would be a great improvement. And then we had using the environment to combat enemies, which I think would be pretty cool, right? And I use that Shadow Temple example. Like you can use the devices in the Shadow Temple and the blades and push enemies into them to dispatch them. I think that would be pretty sweet. I would love to see that in the new game, and I really hope that's something they incorporate into it. And last but not least, I brought up kind of more dynamic duels, peer-to-peer duels, specifically the Dark Link battle. Again, one of the greatest battles of all time in Zelda. But I think they could take that and expound upon it and make it even better. So I'd love to see them do that in the new game. All right, guys, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on how I think they're going to change and improve the combat in the new 2026 Ocarina of Time remake. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I love just discussing with you guys and talking about Zelda and nerding out about Zelda and arguing about it in the comments. That's always fun. That never gets old to me. As always, there's more Zelda videos coming. You can expect that, right? I'm planning on doing 3 to 4 a week, at least. So yeah, there will definitely be more. If that's something you're interested in, again, don't forget to hit subscribe. I appreciate all the new people coming onto my channel as always. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Until the next video. Bye.